Okay, good morning. Thank you for coming. This is the uh, presentation for Zoom, and I'm going to share my screen with you so that you can see what's going on. Uh, my name is Derek Suzuki. I'm with the Instructional Technology team, and we are very, very happy and thankful that you are hopefully doing well and that you are joining us this morning for our session. Um, uh, what we're going to be covering today is a software called Zoom. And Zoom is a presentation software that you can use with your students that also includes the ability to, reach out to your students in real time so that you can help them out and give them instruction or, talk to them and just basically, uh, kind of give you that human touch when you're giving out any kind of materials or instruction that you want with your students. So the first slide that you see up on your screen here is the Zoom meeting controls. And as a participant, these are the controls that you'll see on your screen. The very important ones are the mute and stop video button. So if your microphone is on, you'll see this white. If it's off, there'll be a slash through it. Same thing with the video. So if you find that you're seeing yourself and you don't want to see yourself, you can always hit stop video and take that off. There is a chat window button, which I highly recommend that you do and use. Normally the chat window and everything that we're doing today, you kind of want to put yourself in the perspective of if I'm using this tool with my students, how am I going to not only use it, but manage it, right? So normally in our presentations that we've been doing, the we've had not a double, but somebody managing our chat room. That way, the person that's presenting can just kind of present and make sure they get all the information out there because it's a short amount of time, and we want to give you as much information as possible. And we have somebody in our team, watching the chat room and answering any questions that people might have. Because when you present, especially when you share your screen, it's difficult to manage both the chat and the presentation at the same time. However, if you heard me earlier, there's 700 people that signed up for this presentation today, and Zoom will only allow 100 participants at a time. So all of our team, which is about 5 or 6 people, we're basically all running our own Zoom sessions in order to accommodate everyone. That's why you saw all the different links. So there is no one here to manage the chats window right now. In fact, I don't even have it up on my screen. So in order to manage the questions, and hopefully everyone here is able to hear me, and that, technical issues are, it's always a difficult problem, especially in a group this large. But if you have any questions regarding the instruction or the software or anything like that, what I highly suggest you do is have a pencil or a paper and a pad, pencil pad, just to take down or jot down those questions that you might have, because I probably won't be able to check questions in the chat room while I'm doing the presentation. So if you could save that to the end, I'm trying to build in about 10 minutes for questions and answers at the end, and we can actually run over. So if you, as we're going through this, you'll see that you set a time, but you can actually run over. So even with your classes that you're using with your students, you can save that time even after the class to do question and answer. Also, too, if you're doing the chat window, you notice that if everybody chats at the same time, the chat moves very quickly, just scrolls up and up. So even if I were checking the chat room, it might be a little difficult sometimes to grab a question, and then when I post the answer, you might miss it as well. So it's a really good idea to make sure you have those questions written down on the side. So if I can't get to it in the chat today, or even in this session, I can respond to you when you get my contact information. Okay. One other really important control that you want to point out to your students as well as you to get familiar with is exiting the full screen. When I share my screen with you, it probably takes up your entire screen, and even if you move your mouse over, sometimes people cannot see, how do I get out of this presentation if I want to go to check a browser window, or if I need to do something in a browser window or something on my computer. So at the very top of your screen, you're going to see a green bar, probably with an ID number for our meeting, and then view options. And what will happen is if you click exit full screen, it will make your screen smaller and like any other window that you use on your computer. This becomes really important, especially if you're using this with your students and you want to demonstrate something or show them something on their computer that may require them to go to Google Classroom or Seesaw or some other part of their computer. You have to kind of build in this training or this ability to manipulate those screens. So let me just see if there's anything really, really important. Oh, interesting. I am trying to check the chat in the beginning here just to see if there's any technical issues. Luz, I don't know exactly why it doesn't give you that option. Normally, that view option is there. Try and push your mouse at the very top of the screen. If not, you might not be in full screen already. If you can manipulate your screen and see something else, what you could also try is hit the escape button in the top left corner of your computer. That might also work. Okay, I am going to hide the chat right now, and I'm going to move on with the presentation. Okay. All right, so just wanted to give you a little bit of a introduction to our team. This is the instructional technology team on the right. I am Derek Suzuki. I'm the bottom right corner there. We also have another person helping us out from the PBL department, PBL research teacher, Mr. Ruben Hoffman, and I included his picture there. The presentation that you're looking at is linked to the page that you clicked on the link to get to this meeting. So if you need to go ahead and click on this presentation later to get our contact information, or you can write it down, but it is there for you. And please feel free to email us anytime that you need something. We're definitely here to support you. Okay. And my button is not working. Hang on a second. Sorry, guys. Oh, I think it closed my window. What's going on? Okay, for some reason, my keys were not working. So I'm going to enter present mode again. That'll be edited out of the video. Okay, so we are at Basic Zoom. And if for some reason you don't know where the link is, this is the bit.ly. You can copy that down. But again, it's linked on the trainings page that you got the link to join this meeting. And we are going to start by creating an account. Okay, so right now, you can follow along with me on the presentation, or if you'd like, you can minimize your or make your screen get out of full screen mode, and then you can try and follow along with us on your browser. I do recommend the Chrome browser for pretty much everything that we do with the district because we're so integrated with Google. But technically, you can try other browsers. I would again recommend using the Chrome browser to do this though. Okay, so if you're in the Chrome browser or whatever browser you're choosing, what you really want to do is go to zoom.us. I'm sorry. Huh. Zoom.us, and then either hit the sign in or the sign up button. It really doesn't matter, especially if you haven't created an account. Both of them will take you to the same place. And then what you're going to do is you are going to click on the sign in with Google button. And this is why it's important that you do that. First off, Zoom has given us school districts the ability to create Zoom meetings that go beyond the basic account. Their basic free account gives a user 40 minutes of time for the meeting. But because of the crisis that's been going on, they've extended an offer to our districts where you can get, I don't think it's unlimited, but a much longer time than 40 minutes. So I've heard of Zoom meetings going like for over 2 hours, but and we'll talk about how best to use Zoom in that fashion, but it will definitely give you longer than 40 minutes. You have to sign in with your district account. So this is why it's really important that you sign in with Google and make sure you see that sandy.net when you sign in to create your account. Um, so when you sign in using the Google, if you're signed into the Chrome browser, and again, one more reason why you want to use your Chrome browser, you can sign in and create your account. Uh, I had a question when I showed this slide the other day for this training I was doing at a school site. Can students also create an account? And I do not know. I don't advertise it for the students. I did need to create a slide to test this and give you an example. So I did use one of our student test accounts and it did go through. So I definitely would not advertise it with your students. But again, um, when you do sign in, you do want to use your sandy.net account to create an account and it will let you start your own Zoom account there. Okay. And hang on, I'm so sorry. I have to stop sharing my screen again. Every time I check my chat window to make sure everybody's on, it negates my keyboard for some reason. So I'm going to not check the chat window. I'm so sorry. Okay, there we go. So now you're going to be signed into your Zoom account. And this is basically the dashboard, what you'll get when you sign into your Zoom account. What's going to happen is you'll see the profile button, meeting, webinars, recordings, and settings. Really the one that you're kind of interested in is the meetings button. Okay, you'll see your upcoming meetings here, any previous meetings that you've done, and templates, which we don't really need to worry about. We don't use that, but the upcoming meetings and previous meetings, those are going to be kind of important. Okay, what we really want to do is schedule a new meeting, and you'll see that there's a button here, but there's also a button up here, and this will always be there. So even if I change to a profile webinar and I lose this button, you'll always see this at the very top in on scheduling a meeting. Okay. What I'm going to be doing now is showing you how to schedule a meeting at the actual site. So where it says live demo here, I'm actually going to stop the presentation from the slide deck and I'm going to jump onto the browser so you can see what's going on. Okay. So if I go to zoom.us, what happens is it will take me to my account. And actually, I'm going to sign out so I can show you how to log in. Okay. So if I were trying to sign in, I would click on the sign in button from, again, zoom.us. I would go to sign in. And so if I go to sign in with Google, what's going to happen is it will take me to my account. Again, I want to select the sandy.net account. And then it'll bring me to my meetings. Okay. From here, what's going to happen is I can schedule a new meeting with the button, or up there, I want to schedule a new meeting, and it's going to take me to the screen where I put in the information. Okay. Now, first thing is the topic. So I'm just going to say this is a test meeting. This is, again, what your participants are going to see when they get the invite from you. You can put a description in, you know, if I know it's going to be for my students, student meeting with teacher, it is optional, but if you want to put in a little bit of description of why you're doing this, or some of them could read aloud with the teacher, or something fun like that, then that's great. Scheduling the date. So you just click on the calendar here, and then you can pick what date you want, and this is the 24th. So scheduling the time. Now, for some reason, they only give you increments of hour and half hour. So if I were to schedule this one at 3:30, that's fine. What I tried to do when I first did it, I got into this and I tried to make it 15. When I try that, I click on it. It does go in there and change the time so that it can allow you to do increments beyond the 30-minute and full hour. So as long as, if you don't click on it though, and if I do just 3:15 and I tab away, oh, sorry, what will happen is sometimes it will revert. So you have to really be careful. So if it says 3 o'clock and I click in here, do you see how it changed back to 3? So you have to make sure that when you click on, if you're making 3:15, click on the actual time and then it'll stay at 3:15. Okay, and make sure you pick the right time there for AM or PM. Otherwise, your meeting is going to start at a really weird time. Okay, so there you can also set the duration of your meeting. So 1 hour. This is all standard. So you, by default, it'll be Pacific time. You don't have to worry about recurring meeting. You don't have to really worry about that setting. If there are some tutorials at the very end of this presentation that if you do want to play with some of these settings, you can go ahead and do that. Again, this is just like a basic introduction to Zoom, and so there are some more advanced features that you might want to learn about. Generate automatically. So this is what will happen is when you have this button pushed, what it's going to do is it will create a website address that your participant can click on, and then they'll be able to click on that and enter just like you did today. Hey, require a meeting password. You don't have to worry about that. Again, for the basic use of Zoom. Video, these are by default off. And what that means is when somebody clicks into your meeting, like you did today, by default, the video is off. Okay, so you would have to go and find that video on button that I showed you in the beginning to click it on, which to me is really good. I would not change these settings, even for yourself. For the host, I wouldn't change it because, you know, nobody likes to be surprised on camera. So if you leave it off, keeping this off is a great idea. And we'll also talk about at the as we get down to the slide presentation, you know, some of the considerations you have for your students regarding video. Okay, audio, you kind of want to keep this here, telephone and audio both. I do want to give you just a little bit of information about this because one of my colleagues was hosting a Zoom training for principals and admin this morning. So they were wondering how you connect by telephone. And you're going to notice in your invite, there is no telephone number to call. So what happens is it will send an invite to the person. Like when you send this invite to a person, you're probably going to send it by email, or you're going to send it in Class Dojo, or you're going to send it in Google Classroom, or wherever you're sending it to. If they don't have access to a computer, what happens is if they click on it with their smartphone, they click on that link, it's going to direct them to, at least for me, it directs me to download the Zoom app, and then it will connect the telephone. When we try to do the dial from to add a phone, it does not come up with a phone number that we can use. So, you know, if you're really stuck for a student that needs to get in via a telephone, please email me and we'll try and work out exactly how we can fix that, because right now we don't know exactly. We might have to contact Zoom themselves to see, you know, what or how we can work that. Okay, but hopefully for most of our you know, parents and students, being able to access it won't be a problem. But again, if you do have that special situation where you need the telephone number to dial in, please email me and we can, you know, go ahead and figure out how we can work that. Okay, and then the last part here, these are some really interesting meeting options that you really should look at. The first two. Enable join before host. Now, let's say I'm using this Zoom with colleagues, like I'm using it right now with you. I can click this box to let my participants join early. So basically, they could join the meeting before getting in, before I do. So in, you know, the physical terms, it's like opening up my classroom and leaving it open. Anybody can come in even though I'm not in the room. So with that same analogy, you definitely don't want to do that with your kids, because that would be the same way. You open up your classroom, let the kids in unsupervised. That might not be a good thing, especially if, you know, they start talking or doing things that, you know, maybe not the best thing if you're not in the room. So with professional colleagues, you can definitely enable that. For your students, I probably wouldn't do that. Mute participants upon entry. Now, this actually is kind of a good control, especially in the beginning. Like when you're first introducing Zoom to your students, you know, again, thinking about teaching with this, how you're going to set up the protocols for what you're doing with Zoom, understanding what you you know, want to set up in terms of behavioral, you know, how you're working in this virtual environment. the first few times you do your Zoom, you might just want to hit mute participants upon entry so that they're not, kind of talking before you get started. Of course, as the host, you can mute them all as soon as you want, but if you're dealing with 30 plus students at the same time, this might be a good idea to mute them upon entry, and then later you can unmute them if you wish. So that's something that you might consider switching on when you start your meeting. Okay, so let me just kind of recap really quickly of what we did. We created a topic. We created a description. Again, this is optional though. We set the date and the time and the duration. Okay, um, just a really quick point of consideration. When we're talking about an online meeting, an hour is usually around the sweet spot. You can even go less with the younger ones, or even with the older students. And an hour is pretty much where you want to kind of cut it off. It is a long time, even though it seems it goes really fast for you, especially for the sometimes for the student. It might be the hours probably where you want to end up. Generate automatically to create your link, and then some of the controls that you have, keeping the video off, the participant video off, that's a really great thing. Keeping audio for both, that's fine. And then again, if you do need that dial in, please contact me and we'll try and see what we can do to work that out. And then muting participants upon entry, I recommend that, especially in the beginning of using this with your students. And again, too, this enable join before host, that's something that's you might want to do with colleagues, but probably not with your students. Enable waiting room, we really don't need to worry about that. We've tried it. It's kind of like setting people in a side room before they enter the meeting. I don't know why. But also, this record the meeting. So uh, when I looked on the specs for Zoom, it said that you needed to set up a networking thing with Zoom. So this does not necessarily work. There are other ways to record, and even right now in your control panel, you might see a record button. So it is possible to do recording. I've had other people use it. When I tried it, for some reason, it hung in the cloud, because this is to save it on your local computer. There's a way to record, and it hung up in the cloud for me, and it didn't record my session. So it's hit or miss for me, but we can talk about that near the end of the presentation today. Once all of those things are done, I can hit save. And I get to review all of the details of my meeting. So it says the topic, the description, the time. Okay, this is the meeting ID, in which case you'll notice the meeting ID is the same as the code in the join URL. Okay, this is the web address that you'll get to your students to join your class. Okay, so the meeting ID and this are the same. This button's really important. It says copy the invitation. When I click on copy the invitation, it gives you all of the information that you need in order to send to your students. So again, where am I going to put this? Probably in whatever communication method I have online with my students. So ClassDojo, or Google Classroom or Canvas. This is where I copy and then paste it. It tells you all of the other options that we've had. It just kind of recaps. Okay. Here's where it gets a little weird. Now, starting this meeting, one of the teachers told me, hey, I created my meeting, and then I hit this blue start this meeting button, and it wasn't for tomorrow, but I hit the blue button because I thought, hey, start this meeting. This is not what you want to do. I know it looks very enticing to click on that start the meeting button right away, but what it really does is it starts the meeting. And if I'm scheduling this meeting for the next day, like the 24th, or I don't know, it's today the 24th, today might be the 24th, but if it's scheduled for later on or for another day, if I hit start this meeting, basically you're opening your classroom at that point. And when you open the classroom, they can click in there. So what you want to do is not start this meeting unless you really want to start immediately. Okay, so it's immediately start this meeting. All right, so once that's done, I can just click back on meetings, and then I will see the meetings that I have scheduled. So the test meeting that I scheduled for later today will start at 3:15. the test meeting is here, and then you'll notice that the start button is there right now. So this Zoom for Educators meeting that I have running currently, it says join and end because this is the one I'm currently running. Okay, so this is the most basic way that you can set up a Zoom meeting. And for most of us, that's all we really need in terms of setting up or scheduling a meeting. If I need to go back and edit this meeting, I can simply click on the meeting button. It'll take me to all the meetings I've had scheduled. I can click on test meeting. It'll bring me to my summary of details, and then I can hit edit. Okay, so if I click edit this meeting, maybe I need to schedule this for a different time or date. So instead of the 24th, I'm going to the 25th. I can hit save, and then it'll have the meeting details updated. Okay. Again, if you change anything, you probably need to send them the change of information as well, because they'll click on it on the 24th when I change it to the 25th. The Zoom address did not change, but the details did, so that's a really important thing to communicate to your students. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to, it's about 10:30. I do want to kind of show you some of the controls that you have as the host. And then after that, I'll show you the rest of the resources, and then I can take questions about Zoom. Okay? So once I've scheduled that meeting and it's all set up, what will happen is I'm going to need to start the meeting. So once I start that meeting, what will happen is you will not, unfortunately, be able to see my, you won't be able to see the controls that I have. So let me see if I can bring up, hang on a second. Let me see if I can bring up the control panel. As the presenter, you're going to see almost the same thing you see as the participant. Okay? So I'll go back to this front screen. As the participant, you do have the ability to see who's in your classroom, right? The participants here and the invite, all of these things. These are all the same for the host. Okay. However, there is a caret that's next to the participants that allows you, I'm sorry, there's a caret that comes up when you click on the participant picture that will allow you to control if they're all muted or if they aren't. And what will happen is when you watch the resource videos, they're going to go over in depth all of the controls that you have. Unfortunately, when I try this with the Zoom meetings, you cannot see the controls on my end. And so it makes it a little bit more difficult in order to do that. So let me just kind of stop sharing really quick. And I'm going to jump back in so that I can show you where those resources are. And for those of you that are going to be doing this, I just found out a very interesting situation. I don't know if it's just about my computer, but I haven't run into this in any of the presentations I've done. Anytime I click on the participants to manage the participants, like to mute them or see who's joined, it negates my keyboard. So I can't use my, you know how you normally scroll between slides to go back and forth in your slide presentation, and even escaping the presentation, it negates my keyboard and I get an error beep. So that's something to keep in mind. That's a really weird glitch that I don't think I've run into before. So let me just kind of skip all the way to the back end of our presentation. If you are on the slide presentation, I do want to call your attention to some of these resources because these will be really great for you as you learn. So if I click on the Zoom resource button, it's going to take me to a whole bunch of 1-minute videos on how to use all of the different tools. Okay, so much more than we have time for in our meeting today. Really what I wanted to do with you is show you how to set up a basic meeting. And the reason why I wanted to show you how to set up a basic meeting is not so that you can jump in with your students. It's actually so that you can play with this with your colleagues. Okay, I would highly recommend that you set up your first Zoom meeting with 2 or 3 teachers that you want to have fun with. and then send them the invite, to their email. Say, hey, tomorrow morning, let's go ahead and play with Zoom. I'll be the host, and then you can join it. I can play with all of these controls, see exactly what I can do. That is the best way to start this, and kind of play around with how you can use this best with your students. So it has everything from meeting controls, sharing your screen, scheduling the meeting, all recording a Zoom meeting. Again, there's some caveats to that, but I would definitely try it. When you're trying it out with your friends, try and record that meeting and see how it comes out. Okay, so all of these again are very short 1-minute video introductions. If for some reason these don't do it enough for you, or you still need more support, please feel free to reach out. All of these kind of one-off questions that people run into, these things, like even for me, hey, I just ran into this thing where I couldn't advance my slides with my keyboard. Now I know why, and I can help you with that. But those are some of the things that may not be covered in these introductions, or some of the things that you will run into. Please feel free to share those questions, because we can add it to our knowledge base. Okay, again, let me just show you how we got here. So if I'm in our slide presentation that we shared with you today, again, if you want to copy down this bit.ly, you can. Otherwise, it is linked on the page with the professional learning opportunities. The very last slide has this button for Zoom resources. And then there's also some additional resources I kind of want to introduce you to. There's a Learn Zoom tutorials that was added by one of our teachers here. There's also this one that was submitted by one of our support staff, that she's been teaching with Zoom for quite a while, I think at one of the community colleges. And this document is really awesome because it gives you some of the basic things here, but it also gives you a letter to parents about how to log into Zoom. So when you're doing it, this might be something that you can send out to your parents. You can post this, again, instructions in Google Classroom, or you want to send it, if you have your parents' email, you can give this to them. What I would really advise you to do, though, is once you click on this document, go to File and make a copy for yourself. That way you can edit it however you want. Right now, it's just a read-only copy for you. So again, once you click on this document, go ahead and go File, make a copy, and then you can edit however you want to. And one more really great thing about this document is if you go down to like the third page, what'll happen is Orletta gave us a sample Zoom structure, which is really awesome, because for some of us, it's like, that's great that I can talk to them, but what does it really look like in practice, or what can I, So this is a really cool resource to kind of give you an idea of how you might want to use Zoom with your students. And if you notice, the timing that she gives for this really doesn't go much longer than 30 minutes. So 5, 15, 25. So it could be about 35 minutes and maybe about 40. So anywhere between 40 minutes to 50 minutes. This structure really keeps it within that kind of shorter time limit. That way you can kind of maximize the attention span of your student audience. Okay, so that's a really cool thing, and then gives also some best practices of online teaching. Okay, so again, this document is in the slide presentation from Orletta Nguyen, and we really appreciate that. And if you remember, I kind of covered a little bit of what we are thinking about restricting the participants' video feed. As the person that is, kind of running your the meeting as the host, you have the ability to not only mute your students, but you can also cut off their video camera. And this might be a good thing, in many respects. But we did have some concerns regarding ed code and students showing their image online or in your classroom. Most participants, the students have permission from their parents and they're totally fine with it. But if for some reason, they aren't fine with it and the student is not necessarily following directions, this document here, and I'll just kind of bring it up. This document will demonstrate how to cut off their video feed. And once you cut it off as the host, what will happen is it will stay cut off. So when you find the student, see, this is me as the host. I had to sign in as a different user to do this job aid. But when I click on the camera, when I manage participants, it allows me to stop their video. And then when the student tries to start their video camera again, they will get this message. Host has stopped your video and you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it. So, again, when you start this with your students, this might be something that you want to, experiment with, kind of gradual release, right, of responsibility and privileges. That way you can kind of control the flow of it. Once again, what I really highly recommend is you get together with a group of your teachers that you want to play with and then start a Zoom session. You be the host today, play with the restriction feature, see how you can activate, cut off their feed, turn it back on. Again, the Zoom resources here will show you how to do all of those controls. This document is just back to our professional learning page for teachers. For all of our sessions, there are the presentation slides available. What we are trying to do is get recordings of our sessions up here so that if in case one of your colleagues or you need a refresher, if the colleague doesn't get into the course, they can at least see a recording of this webinar and they can kind of watch it. So again, the presentation slides for Zoom for Educators, the one we're going through right now, the link is right there for you to get. Okay? And then finally, with everything that we're doing now in the basically virtual world, what we really want to provide the teachers is materials for digital citizenship. Okay? Because we're talking about using classrooms online, we're using tools like social media, this kind of thing to communicate with our students. It's really important that we provide resources for you so that you can instruct your students about proper online behavior, digital etiquette, using these tools for academic language, academic purposes, because really when you're talking about using the Zoom meeting, it's in conjunction with a lot of other tools that we're using, right? I want to probably provide a way to touch base with the student for maybe about an hour a day, but the rest of the day, my assignments or everything are going to be somewhere else, or my activities are going to be somewhere else, right? But within that time, if you provide a collaborative activity, perhaps in Google Classroom, where you want them to post to a discussion board, or you want them to do something in Canvas where they're working with other students, or even in some other ways, you really want to talk about digital citizenship. And if you are maybe kind of stuck for some materials that you want to cover when you first start doing this process with your student, start with digital citizenship. These lessons that they have here at Common Sense, they're really awesome. They're broken down by the grade levels and everything. So these are really great tools that you can start with, getting them in, figuring out, again, your protocols that you're going to be doing with this kind of environment that you're going to be using, and then going from there. So that might be a really great place to begin. Okay, let's see now. So with that, I just want to kind of show you some of the slides that we skipped over because I did the live demo, and then I'm going to really actually open it up for questions. So we did cover the scheduling a meeting, copying the invitation on the review the details page, taking that and then putting it wherever you want to send it to your student, okay? And when we're talking about controls, that video that you can see in Zoom goes over it much better in depth than we can cover here. So again, once you watch that video, work with a team to play and practice those controls, okay? Especially when you decide you want to share your screen. Let me just add this one thing in before we get to the question and answers. When you decide you want to share your screen, you will have some options. Okay, so even as a participant, if you look at the bottom of your screen in this window, there is a button that says share screen or something like that, and you share. You can control that you can control letting your students share their screen. Sometimes you might want to let them if they're showing off their work, but when you share your screen, you have some options as to what part of your computer you want your kids to see. The most versatile one is the first one, which is the desktop. So whatever comes up on my desktop, like my slide presentation, or I have to jump to a website or anything else, the students will be able to see it. If you pick individual ones like this tab, this Google Chrome tab, or this other sticky thing, it's only going to show that, and when you switch to something else, your participants will not be able to see it. So keeping it on desktop really is the best thing, which also makes you think about what's on your desktop. So if you have anything that you don't want your participant to see, like maybe some personal email or anything like that, make sure you hide it off of your desktop before you start sharing your screen. Okay, you got to clean it up just a little bit. Okay, and then we get to the resource section at the very end. All right, so with that, I am going to kind of jump away from the presentation, and I'm going to open up the chat window here so that I can kind of take a look and see if there's any